Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. I'm your host, Dr. Matthew Tanner, the founder of Wounded Leadership Ministries. You know, the calling to shepherd God's church brings some of life's greatest joys and adventures. Yet this calling also comes with profound challenges. Many church leaders face those challenges in silence. Nearly every pastor will experience the pain of unjustified termination or forced resignation at least once in their ministry journey. On this podcast, we create a safe place where wounded leaders can share their stories, find community, and discover pathways toward healing and a renewed purpose. Each episode will bring honest conversations with those who have walked through the valley of ministerial suffering and emerged stronger on the other side. Whether you're currently serving in ministry, recovering from church trauma yourself, or simply want to better understand the challenges that are facing today's church leaders, this podcast is for you. It will offer biblical wisdom, practical strategies, and genuine hope. Now let's begin today's conversation. Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Stories from the Wounded podcast. I'm excited to have Kristen Humiston here today from ChristianJoyCoaching.com, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your ministries, but I'm excited to hear your story. We've talked before a little bit in the past. I know you fit the bill for the Wounded Leadership Stories from the Wounded. So looking forward to hearing from your story. Kristen, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here today. So my name is Kristen, and I go by Kristen Joy. That has a whole entirely different story with it, which we may or may not get into. But I am I'm a ministry coach, and I am a therapist in the state of Wisconsin. And so I work primarily, kind of 50-50, splitting my time between therapy world and coaching world, and primarily working with pastors' wives, specifically wounded pastors' wives. So whether that's pastors' wives who are still in ministry or those who have experienced an unwanted exit. And I'm married. I have 6 kiddos. 2 of them are fully launched. 1 of them is in the college stage, so like half launched, half not. And then I have 3 still at home, and our youngest is in elementary school, and then our oldest at home is a junior. So
Awesome.
kind of the wide gamut there in terms of family life.
Awesome. So this podcast really is about sharing the stories of those who have been wounded and have experienced the, as you put it, the unwanted exit of ministry. So where do you want to start? Start just with your story. How did you earn that badge?
Yeah. Ironically, we earned it after leaving a church that had fired their senior pastor overnight, very unexpectedly. I believe the pastor and his wife thought we had something to do with it, but it took us just as much by surprise. There was no reason for it. And they came to my husband and said, "Hey, really want you to be senior pastor now." I looked at him when he shared that and I said, "No way. We are not going to stay in a church that would just up and fire their pastor overnight." So the irony that 2.5 years later, we did not stay in that church. We were in a new church within about 2 to 3 months after that. And the irony that that's what we experienced 2.5 years later ourselves is just not lost on me at all. So I had written in my journal. So I grew up as a pastor's kid and married my husband, who was a pastor. He was already a pastor. He was graduated. I was graduating from Bible college, so we got married. So I like to say, like, I was a PK, I married a P, and then I had my own PKs, became the PW, had my own PKs, and then I just wasn't. And I'd never experienced life ever outside of the ministry world. And so that, when you're in it, you understand, like, that dictates your calendar. It dictates your vacations. Like, we didn't really take vacations. We took youth conferences and pastoral conferences, and then you tack on a day or so to see something interesting in that area. So just suddenly not being was so shattering, life altering. It felt like I had glasses ripped from my face, slammed onto the ground, and like smashed into the heel just grinding into this glass. And so I went into a deep depression.
Wow.
And my husband, I call it vocational whiplash. He went from all of his adult life and all of his education. He'd gotten a seminary, MDiv, and all of everything we'd invested shattered and now he went and worked on the floor of a factory, which is nothing to say anything bad or looking down on working on the factory floor. It was not something he was used to.
Right.
And at this point, he was early 40s. And so just even physically to go into shift work, it's what's called a 2-2-3. This is like, and then it was shift work 2 weeks of that crazy schedule, nights, and then 2 weeks day, and then 2 weeks night. Like the kids had a bit of that same, the ripple effect of that vocational whiplash, because dad was no longer able to go play catch with them or go to any of their things. We homeschooled at the time, and it was about 6 days before Christmas. And so we took the kids, because my oldest he was in 8th grade and my youngest was 2. And so we took the kids out. My oldest was in just a couple classes from school right away for some particular reasons in there. But then we ended up in my parents' basement, and I had packed up each one of the kids a literal banker's box with their school books in it. I don't know what they did, because I was not able. I mean, some days I remember I would say like, hey, get your books out or something, but I really went into a pretty deep depression, and they were left to kind of fend in life a bit on their own while I was physically present, but not at all, really present for any other purposes outside of being physically there. So
Sure.
yeah.
And people, I've hearing these stories and of my own, that people underestimate the massive identity change that takes place. And I've heard people talk about, or other pastors I've talked to about, not only you lose you lose all support structures, like all at the same time. And then you're struggling with, this is not what I went to school for. So can you can we dive into that
Yeah.
specific event? Could you tell us that story of, kind of diving into to that church experience? And as I say, feel free to change the names to protect the guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, we had gone there, and what was interesting was we had ended up in, after the senior pastor of the one church we were in, another church in the area pursued and had been pursuing us prior. We had a lot of people who had sent their kids to like our Awana program, or sometimes they would do youth groups, so there was some intermingling there. I actually had been teaching music to several of the families at this other church, and so they knew us. They knew us very well, and they had said, man, we're looking for someone who can come in and be senior pastor after our senior pastor retires. It's a good idea. And now that I've worked and listened, I've worked with many, many women, hundreds of them at this point. Churches do have scripts. Certain locations or denominations, they have scripts that have been running for generations. And the way they operate, I can hear a sentence and just about be able to tell them everything that happened after that point, type of thing. So I
For sure.
know this now as a systemic thing, but at the time I had some concerns. I'm a pastor's kid, so my own father had been retiring at the time and had announced his retirement about 3 different times over a 5-year period, which I never sat well with me, because that creates such disruption in the church body. And so I just asked at the beginning of the hiring process, hey, can we just have a little line in there? It doesn't have to have a specific date, but that the intention is that we are being hired for the purpose of becoming senior pastor at the retirement of so-and-so. No, there's just no time frame, and so we don't really think that we could do that. And I had been very uneasy with that, because I know how churches behave. I didn't know the depth or really think that, something so atrocious would happen to us. But that was a big concern. And it was very good. It was a very good fit. Our kids did well there. We had prior relationships, so we didn't have to spend a lot of the time building relationships. I mean, of course, we're building additional relationships. But we did move, and we did move into a parsonage situation for all intents and purposes. And so, as I know, you've written about, that puts you in a more vulnerable place. But you trust people. You trust that they're going to seek your welfare as well as the church's welfare. And so It was about a year, year and a half in, and there was an issue with someone who was really unhappy with something that my husband had done and had continued to stir the pot. We had
Mhm.
had a meeting. There was nothing that was inappropriate. It's just a really unhappy church member. And
Mhm.
the senior pastor had met. We'd had other leadership and said, like, hey, I'm sorry that you're unhappy. Like, how can we work this out? Leadership isn't going to change anything. This isn't,
Mhm.
basically saying this isn't anything that anybody has done wrong, but how can we
Yeah.
help resolve this?
Right.
And that individual did stir a lot of the pot. And so as that kind of escalated behind doors, and we would hear like, oh, so and so, oh, she met with all of these people, or, they all met together. I said, hey, honey, like, I'm really feeling uncomfortable here. There was one particular incident that the elders called me in. Well, and about a year before we got fired, all of the elders shifted, like they had, people who had been serving came up on their
Mhm.
time frames, and so new ones were appointed, that kind of thing. And it was a family group, a
Mm.
father, son-in-law, and I think and another son-in-law. So there was this dynamic that you were like, this is too much power in one family system. That was
Right.
uncomfortable. My husband is an eternal optimist and I am an eternal skepticist. And so there was that battle kind of going on between us. And I was doing the very typical pastor's wife thing, like, oh God, help me be patient and change my heart. And if there's any
Yeah.
bitterness here against him, like really pulling all that on me. And they pulled us into a meeting because I was going to have a music camp in the summer, which had been approved by all the appropriate people. And an elder stood up. He was so angry, and I could not understand why. And he said, you went behind our back and planned this. And he was upset, I think, about questions of liability, which I completely understand. I let them know that I have, had my own insurance and
Mhm.
this had been approved already. So I was quite confused what was going on. I think they were just trying to find anything to continue upsetting the basket. And
Yeah.
those individuals were connected with this individual who had been very unhappy. So it just kind of kept like having weird things. And the pastor announced his retirement was going to happen January 1st of 2018. He announced that maybe in July-ish. And so my husband started just kind of making plans,
Mhm.
and people were talking, like, oh, okay, so Jason's going to be senior pastor now. And then suddenly, they had to form the committee. Oh, it's just a formality. We're going to get other resumes, actually. We had some friends that were on that committee, and they were like, in the first meeting, they told us later, much later. But in the first
Yeah.
meeting, said, why do we need to get more
I
resumes? Like,
thought y'all were brought in for
right, right.
this.
And so what's in October, it was like October 7th, I believe, I wrote in my journal, God, whatever you have to do to get us out of here.
Yeah.
I've since learned I'll be a little more specific next time I say whatever you have to do. Like, yeah, because I would have never imagined. You just don't think people are that capable, especially people in the body of Christ. And I looking back on it now, there was a family system that like hired us, and then
Mhm.
a different family system went in power while we were there. And there were three major family systems in that particular church, and they all have hundreds, 100 years of fighting. So this
In
really
rotating power.
exactly, exactly. So this really was not, it feels personal because
Oh, sure.
the outcome is personal, but it wasn't about us. And the church we had been at prior, they have a history of just ousting their pastor whenever they're unhappy. So this is what churches do. They have systems, and oftentimes, even if you ask the questions, they're not giving the answers that are actually accurate.
Oh, sure.
When there's been, things that they want to kind of hold a little close, they don't want themselves to look bad, that kind of thing. They want to always put their best foot forward, which I don't blame them. But so you can try to be as prepared as you can possibly be,
Sure.
but you can't protect yourself against what people are going to do, with their free will.
Yeah, I've likened it before. This may get me in trouble a little bit, but I've likened it before to the search process to really bad online dating.
Mhm.
It just so you discover these systems at play, and I mean, there's so many memories replaying in my head as we
Mhm.
talk about this.
Yeah.
So it gets down to this family system comes into power, and they start this one lady is the mobbing effect, and
Mhm.
getting her little army together.
Mhm.
Then it kind of comes down to a head. Kind of pick up the story
Yeah.
at
So I
what
had
took
written
place there.
that. Yeah, so I'd written that in October. And it was December 16th was the day they called us in. It was a Saturday. The Wednesday before, we had had several personal family crises going on. And my husband was at the church using the church internet because it was faster than our country, home internet to secure some travel plans to help a family member out
Hmm.
who was in significant crisis. And so he was already, it was late at night. He was tired, but he's also under significant personal stress. And then there was a renovation project going on. And so three women were at the church, two of whom had been kind of part of this, unhappiness already. They were
Uh-huh.
trying to get something going on in that renovation because they were going to have a church event that
Hmm.
next Sunday or whatever. And so they had been, we later found out, already texting elders and that kind of thing. They were worked up about this not going according to their timeline. So my
Hmm.
husband, leaving, just stopped in to the fellowship hall and said, "Hey, I'm going to be heading out here. I just want to let you know because now you guys are here alone. Do you want me to lock up or where do you want me to lock up?" type of thing.
Yeah.
And from the description, he said, "I just lost it because they came at me and just started blowing up, yelling at me about what they wanted and how this wasn't going right and blah, blah, blah." And so he said, "I just kind of lost it." Now,
Yeah.
my husband is, I don't even know what lost it means for him because I've never seen him lose it. Um,
Yeah.
I just know when he walked in the door that night at 9:30, 10 p.m., he was shaking from head to toe. And I thought, wow, I've never seen him react this way. So whatever happened must have been pretty significant.
Right.
And that was the straw that broke the camel's proverbial back. One of those women went home right away, sent an email, which we were able to read later, said, "I will never sit in a church under a pastor like this, blah, 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 blah." My husband was known in the community. He was an umpire for baseball,
Hmm.
known for keeping his cool when all the parents would be stressed out and yelling, swearing, whatever. Very
Sure.
well known for keeping us cool. And so this was not a character issue. This was, okay, now I can use this and we can get him out.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for in these
Mhm.
situations. Just the smoking gun,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
anything that they can find. And I find it interesting as with my story and other pastors and pastors' wives that I interview, that pastors aren't allowed to be human at all. Like they can blow up about their situation, but if you meet that at all and set that boundary of like, you're not going to treat me like that, then all of a sudden, oh, he's got a character flaw. Like,
In certain denominations, because in other denominations,
sure,
the pastor is allowed to be the angry one and nobody else can have any recourse against that. So
sure.
it's an interesting thing that resulted in a phone call on Saturday morning asking my husband to come in. I could hear what they were asking. I said, "Ask them if I can come," to which he
Mm.
did. And the answer was no. And I said, "Well, I'm coming anyway." And they said, "Well, she can come, but she can't come in the room." So when we got there, they walk us down the hallway to those old country churches where there's like a newer part and then there's the older part. So this boardroom was in an older part, has a particular smell, which I can still smell today, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The man held the door open for my husband and then put his arm out so I couldn't walk in there with him. And what I did see with the door open was the entire room, which maybe was like a 12 by 12 or a 14 by 14 type room, full of people. So much so that you couldn't see the wall, just people, and a singular, metal folding church chair in the middle of the room. which I'm assuming that's where my husband's at. So it's like this Inquisition for what? I don't really know.
Yeah.
The only thing I heard was, you're done here. Don't worry about coming into church tomorrow, and you'll have to contact our secretary to get your things out at another time. We're changing the locks tonight.
That quick.
Yep, that's all that was to that.
And when people hear this sort of thing, because this is not, I wish this was an isolated story and I
But
could
it's
say, well,
not.
Christian, you're the only one that's been through this
No.
time and time again. And people, it will absolutely blow their mind that this is taking place in churches, that this type of just attack on the pastor. And it was just that quick. Did they give any reasons as to why or at that point, or it's just like, yeah, you're done?
Nope, no reasons. So there was no accusations of anything that we could defend, but there was also no approach of like, hey, we heard this, what's going on? There's no belief in the pastor in terms of, we're for you. There is very much just you're here at our service, and when we're done with your service, then you're done. My husband and I went away about a year or two ago, and I don't even remember the name. I need to find the name of the movie, but we watched a movie, and we watched it because it was like a DVD that was there. They didn't have, smart TV. Anyway, so we watched this movie because of the actors in it. We did not know the storyline was really that all three of these male actors who had been, vice president, then department type of presidents in this very massive company, the company president changes his mind and is shifting, kind of downsizing, making changes. And all three of them, which are like the closest friends with this president, get ousted.
Wow.
And this is what they did in the movie, right? They bring in a yellow slip and a banker's box, which even just seeing that banker's box was like, whoa, because of my connection with that banker's box, right?
All the feelings.
Yeah. And it's just, okay, you're done here. And it clicked with me. And I'm looking at my husband because we didn't know this was really the plot of the movie. And I said, are you okay, honey? He said, yeah. But that was it. Like, it was just like, we were both really taking this in a new way. And I thought, because these individuals who were heading this up, they are CEO people. They have a way of dealing in their worlds. This is how this is just what it is. It's employment. Like, you're done here and now we're done. So for them, maybe that's normal. I don't know. It still feels like it shouldn't be normal, but I felt like, oh, I can see this in a different light. Again, a little less personally. Also, as I've become a therapist and learn about family systems, I see it less personally because we can overlay everything we know about family systems right onto here. We can pick out the players and how they're going to behave. And we know this is what humans do. Again, doesn't make it impact us less personally, but I do take it less personally now. And some of that's time and distance. Yeah. So that was that. And we drove home. We had to drive by one of the leaders' homes. And I asked my husband if I could light it on fire. He said no. So
yeah, I've had a few of those of like, Lord, can I? No, you're not.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go sit back
I did
down.
ask him right before we moved, like, could I just take some tomatoes? Like tomatoes. Or maybe we could do the youth group like pancake, trick.
Give me something.
Something?
The Oreos on the windshield, something. Give me something, Lord.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some places it's been years, but I'm thinking I could drive there. I'm just,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and you bring up an amazing point, how corporate world that is the mentality. Well, that's just the game you play, but in the church, I mean, and you kind of put some bookends on it. In the church, you have the search process where they promise all these things, and we're going to follow you, and you're a spiritual pastor, you're our shepherd, blah, 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 so on and so forth. We've all heard it. And then it gets down to this, and you're like, you're dismissed. It's like, where's the disconnect?
Yeah. In fact, when we started there, when we had candidated, again, we had friends there. So I was walking down the hall with one of the friends. Her husband was in leadership at the time, was not in leadership when we were forced out. But I said, I'm not doing really well. Like, I was at a point, I had not dealt with some personal traumas that had happened earlier in my life. I had not dealt with a significant family trauma, really childhood complex trauma type stuff. And I had 6 kids that were, 12 years. Really, our first 4 were under 5 years. And then we had a space and 2 more. And so I was just
Wow.
depleted in
Yeah.
all ways. And I had said to her, like, what happens if like I just kind of break down? And she said, well, we're going to love you through it. We're just going to pick you back up because that's what we do in the body of Christ.
Sure.
And so that conversation vividly played through my mind as we're driving home, having just been fired overnight.
Wow.
And I kind of went into a psycho mode. Totally makes sense. I mean,
Sure.
I was physically shaking for several hours. I think the first phone call I made was to the principal because the woman who had written the email, her daughter went to school with my son. And the character of both of those individuals was that most likely if my son showed up to school on Monday morning, that daughter would make a big deal about what had just happened. And so I didn't want to have my son go through that. So I withdrew him right away from school,
Wow.
talked to a math teacher to try to figure out, like already my head's like, how are we going to do this? Because I need him to still be able to finish this class, which thankfully they allowed him to do. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I kind of went into this like weird task and freak out mode. And then I called our best friends from seminary who lived about 3 hours from us. And after I don't even know how I must have sounded. Again, probably pretty crazy. And she just said, Kristen, come, just come. You guys just come here. And I'm so thankful because I think we did. I mean, within 2 hours, we were on the road. I've never packed my family of 8 up that quickly. I just, whatever.
It just threw something in a suitcase and we're out.
Yeah. And then we made the trip over. And they just ministered to our hearts by just being there for us. They didn't pepper us with questions, but they listened if we wanted to talk. The kids were able to just play together. They had kids that were similar ages and had been good friends in seminary years too. I'm so grateful that we had them.
Yeah.
So we stayed there for 4 days, kind of caught our breath a little bit, and then drove home. And on the way home, 9 p.m., Indianapolis, it's rainy. We're an hour or so from home yet. Our transmission dies.
Of course it does.
And I met a few months ago with a woman who was sharing her story. And she's like, and on top of all of this, our transmission went out. Can you believe it?
Yeah, me too.
I would maybe not believe it, but yes, actually that happened to us too. And she was like, really? So it's not about me, but I do just want you to know. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, my husband rode with the tow truck for over an hour home. And the only people that we knew that had a vehicle big enough to haul our whole family home was, of course, someone who had been in that room and had signed his vote to forcing us out. So I felt like, it was dead silent, him and I riding in the front, the kids in the back. And he finally says, maybe 30 minutes into driving, I'm really sorry. And I said, you didn't have to say for us to go. You didn't have to vote him off, right? Like,
yeah, we could have done this a different way.
Yeah, you could have at least stood up
and said something.
Yeah, said something. He was like, I knew it was going to be better for you guys just to go. And so that's why I did it. I was like, you
like, how is it going to be better? Yeah. It's like those statements are like, how do you think it was
Well,
going to be better?
Right.
Like, do you realize what we're going through?
Yeah. And they don't, right? I mean, because our home suddenly wasn't secure. We have no income. Most people, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people do know what it's like to have nothing financially. But to have the typical pastoral wage, which is what we had at that point, we had nothing in the bank. There's no grand severance plan. There's no retirement. There's no unemployment. That's the other thing. A lot of people think pastors have unemployment. There's no unemployment. Like, some do, but in these independent churches, no. And so, yeah. And I think the other thing that was hard for us was because we had such a large family, the reality was that none of our family members wanted us either. So how are you supposed to keep going?
Yeah, because that's what sets this apart. That it's what makes this hurt even more. because making that corporate world connection, yes, you lose your job, but you still have your house, your family, your support structure. You still have something there. But what people don't realize in this phenomenon is not only, like you said, your income was taken, your house is in jeopardy, your friendship structure, that structure that you would run to and go, we just lost our job. Well, that's
Right.
gone. I mean,
Right.
everything is taken away. And then you become, the stranger in your own community. I kind of like it before you have the big red letter P on for pastor on your, you know, on your chest, and you're just ostracized and isolated overnight.
Yeah. And they instructed the church not to talk to us. We were instructed not to talk. They gave, and they offered a 6-week severance based on the condition that we not talk to anyone about what happened.
Like I
So
said,
they
if what you're
control the
doing is
narrative.
right, why are you afraid of us saying anything?
Right, right. They control the narrative, and we have had a
Sure,
couple of people reach out, not very quickly, but 2, 3 years. Hey, we finally figured out what went on. This was some of the things that they told us, but we just knew something didn't set right with us on it. So that's the other piece
hmm,
too that's traumatic often for the church is they're not given the clear story. And
sure,
so they might think we weren't youth pastors, but it's common if you're a youth pastor, the kids feel abandoned, the youth group kids
sure.
feel abandoned, and that's what they're told that, you know, and so again, a lot of family system stuff when you're talking about maybe like a divorce type of situation. Um, and the people who get to control that narrative then are the leadership, whatever that
Uh-huh.
leadership system has looked like. Yeah, so for women, I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have the physical needs that we need, the safety and security of like water, food, and shelter.
Sure,
And up from there, love and belonging, esteem. Top one is what's, called self-actualization. So I always just kind of liken that to like being who God actually created you to be, living out of that
sure.
whole. All of these things are challenged.
Hmm.
And so the loss is just so significant and
Hmm.
every family member feels it. And I have seen those that do have a family system, either like a blood family system that
Hmm.
they feel is supportive, or friends that they feel like they can still maintain that's supportive.
Hmm.
They weather, not that it's not difficult, but they weather that trauma much differently than those that are left without.
Absolutely. Well, that goes back to the importance of that 4 days getting away to a friend's house,
Hmm.
of just go grieve for 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And I wish it could have been 4 months, right?
Sure, sure.
But
Yeah. So in the aftermath, how did you heal? Are you healing? Because I get asked all the question, well, when did you heal from it? And I usually ask them, I'll let you know when that happens. So give us the rest of the story, like
yeah.
where, in the healing process. I know it led to this ministry. I want you to tell everybody about your ministry here in a minute, but
Yeah.
give us that rest of that healing, like journey-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. We spent 4 months in the basement, and I had somebody tell me once, "Yep, churches keep everything they want hidden in the basement." And I'm like,
Mm,
"Whoa, like that's really powerful."
yeah.
And that was very much survival for a lot of reasons. From there, it was about 9 months in when I had the thought while driving. I didn't have my children with me, but while driving, like, yeah, like I locked my eyes on an oak tree and I started feeling my hands just kind of want to go towards it. And I thought, whoa,
Like, okay.
yeah. I'm thinking, because it would just have been so much like I just need to end the pain. It hurts so bad to
Sure.
just exist. And so I went home and it was the next day I made a phone call. Focus on the Family was my first phone call. From there, I connected, and not because of their referral, but I connected with a local Christian counseling, and miraculously, you know, manufacturing work, you have insurance. And so for $25 copay, I could begin going to
Wow.
therapy. And we just
Yeah.
made that a priority. There's a lot of excuses that are made. Oh, we don't have time. We don't have money. We don't have whatever. And I say, well, the alternative is you don't have time or money for that either. So, yeah, which which goes into my ministry a bit. But yeah, spent the next 18 or so months in regular weekly therapy. Experienced for the first time, I had never been in a male Christian space that really respected women. And
Mm.
so actually, I say my three healers in the beginning were a chiropractor, a realtor, and um, and then the therapist,
Yeah.
all of which were males who treated me with utmost belief, respect,
Sure.
kindness. And so for me, that was really because it was kind of the culmination, not just the unwanted forced exit, but the culmination of all of those other things. And so I
Mm.
was also able to seek healing for some traumas that had happened prior. And then I started asking questions in my therapy sessions like, that's a really interesting question. How do you know to ask that? And I started becoming more interested in the process than, like, still staying in my
Sure.
process. So
Yeah.
from there, yeah, I pursued coach training and then went back to get my master's, to become a therapist myself, and my
Wow.
husband is a trainer now for that same company. Wouldn't be his first choice of job, but
Mhm.
he is thankful for what it has provided for us through these years, and yeah, the healing still comes. There's pieces of it healed along the way. I had
Mm.
very specific ministry traumas that were healed by coming back to a home area that
Mm.
held a lot of ministry trauma and very, very specific things that have been healed for me along the way, which
Sure.
I'm not sure would have had the opportunity to heal had we not been in the same exact place
Mm.
where they had occurred. So for me, that's kind of where and what has brought me to where I'm at. Our kids, this is kind of where my focus is on the women and children because that's kind of a gap area out there. And the ripple effect into children is so huge. We had one who began cutting for about a year or so. We had another one who dealt with such anger, he started taking it out on the younger siblings. And so
Mhm.
we had to get both of those individuals into some therapy. We've walked that road of, my biggest fear in afterwards. What if they're going to turn their back from God?
Sure.
And a lot of my healing has come from being able to really go, you know what? Actually, I can't control any of this.
Right.
Learning to just be with the Lord, be
Mm.
delighted in by Him, and me delight in Him with no performance or condition on that.
Wow.
And then the same for my children, the same for my husband, that even my expectations or desires that I had, especially as a homeschooling Christian mama, we
Mhm.
tend to hold on to some things pretty tightly.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a lot of my healing process. We are still, I mean, I met last year, almost like quarterly or so, with my pastor. We're in a
Mhm.
church. We do not attend weekly. That's intentional still. And
Mhm.
we are not in a church environment that is really the same line of where we come from. And
Sure.
that is also intentional because it just feels a lot better not to be in the same space as some of the symbols or language,
Sure.
approach to people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it is a healing process, and there are still things that will like go, oh, a couple weeks ago, something about church came up, and I just had like a renewed, oh my goodness, my younger two have really never known their dad as pastor. And that was
Yeah.
weird that even like, I kind of thought, where did that even come from? I've, thought about that kind of stuff. So
Right.
yeah, it's a process.
Sure. So tell us about your ministry because I know this comes from all of that experience, that your healing process, then becoming a therapist and then wanting to reproduce that healing process in others. Tell us about that most important work.
Yeah. Working with pastors' wives in general has been where my coaching has been
Mm.
focused on. And again, pastors' wives either actively or those that are no longer a pastor's wife by vocation. And then partnering with some organizations who help to send me some of those that are especially in this unwanted church exit.
Sure.
So starting earlier this year, being able to finally get a little bit more focused where I want to be, starting
Yeah.
to offer support groups that are the title of them Beyond Forced Termination. And it's
Mm.
a 6-week support group for women, pastors' wives, and women in ministry that have
Mm.
experienced unwanted church exits for whatever reason. And so
Sure.
there's those that have often had a similar experience that I have had, and then also those that have experienced a forced exit due to husband's infidelity.
Sure.
And that is another level of trauma. The support group really operates on two main levels. Obviously, the first is for community and support, because the
Mm.
most important thing is for these women who have experienced this to hear and see other women who have experienced it, are experiencing it, going
Yeah.
through have these same questions as them. They can finally say these things without people spiritually bypassing, saying these ridiculous things like, well, where God closes a door, he opens a window, or something so ridiculous like that. But
Yeah.
God had a better plan. No, 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 no. Stop.
I remember that very distinctly, somebody coming up to me and goes, "You know what? God has a plan for this." And this poor unsuspecting person caught me at the wrong time. And I said, "Yeah, I know he's got a plan. And this one stinks."
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Those things just, yeah, they just don't help.
Yeah. So we address what trauma is. We name like
Sure.
moral injury and those kinds of things, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, that's what this is. Okay. And it helps to wrap a name around it. Talk
Mm,
about the grief, we talk about the family aspect, and have a space to talk about children, the impact that's going on in children. And then how do we even heal? How do we deal with this?
sure.
And get really practical on that level as well. So it's been amazing this year. I think there's been about 30 women or so that have gone through these small groups. They're usually between 6 to 8 participants,
Hmm.
small on purpose. And
Sure.
the friendships that are born out of that then are carried on after the group ends, and they're able to stay connected with people that get them, right?
Sure.
Hopefully can help through some of that transition. So there's some other things that are in the works in terms of how to continue supporting the women who have come to those groups in particular. I have my half-written book that's, again, for women in particular, um,
Yeah,
to address this piece, especially for the family aspect.
absolutely. How do they get a hold of you as this goes out there and they're identifying with the story? How do they find you?
Yeah. On Facebook and Instagram, I am the Ministry Wife Coach with Kristen Joy. And my website is kristenjoycoaching.com. If they type in the Ministry Wife Coach, they can find me out
Sure.
there. So, website or any of those social media channels are a great way to connect.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, or and you either you identify with this or you know somebody that has been through this, go to christianjoycoaching.com. We're going to put that website in the show notes and the link of the podcast so they can find you. I always get to the end of these with like so many more questions and things that I want to discover and cover, but thank you, Christian, for being willing to share your story of pain, suffering, and healing.
Thank you.
So, pastors, if you're listening, pastors, ministry leaders, ministry wives, all that kind of are under this umbrella, if you have further questions or would like to discover more about wounded leadership, you can go to our website, woundedleadership.com. If you need counseling, this is really bringing up some things for you. There's a tab on there that says biblical counseling. Let us know. Either our counselors can help you or we will get you connected with those like Kristen who can also help you as well. And then finally, if you're listening to this podcast and you identify with this and you want to find healing in your story, there's a tab on our website simply called Tell Your Story. Get a hold of us and simply just tell your story, and we might get a hold of you and possibly feature you on this podcast. Christian, parting words. Why is it important for the ministry leaders and those that are surrounding them? Why is it so important to share your story?
Sharing our story heals us, helps us process and absorb what's happened to us, brings some purpose and meaning that maybe we didn't know was in there.
Sure.
And without telling our story, it all stays inside and just kind of wanders around, eats away. And this way we can connect with others and, yeah, begin to heal.
Sure. Kristen Joy, thank you so much for coming on the Wounded Leadership Stories of the Wounded podcast. And I'm so glad you're willing to tell your story and how it's going to impact those that are listening.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me
for
on.
being here. All right. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. We hope today's conversation has given you valuable insight into how vulnerability and resilience work to shape truly authentic leadership. Remember, our wounds don't define us. Every scar tells a story of survival, and every setback creates an opportunity for extraordinary growth. If today's episode resonated with you, please visit us at woundedleadership.com, where you're going to find resources, community forums, opportunities to share your own leadership journey. I also invite you to subscribe, rate, review this podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps us to reach more leaders who might be struggling in silence. Till next time, this is Dr. Matthew Tanner reminding you that your wounds can become your greatest source of wisdom, connection, and strength. It's the Wounded Leadership Podcast, transforming wounds into wisdom, one story at a time.